Welcome to the New South Wales Water Stories series, sharing experiences in delivering water-sensitive city approaches across coastal, regional and urban areas in New South Wales. My name is Jan Orton. I'm a Senior Consultant at Mosaic Insights, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation. We've been working with the Cooperative Research Centre for Water-Sensitive Cities to develop this series to better understand the challenges, opportunities and value in implementing water-sensitive city solutions. In today's episode, we'll explore developing strategy and delivering action. I'm joined today by Christy Good from Blacktown City Council and Phil Birtles from Sydney Water. And to kick things off, Christy, I'd like to start with you. If you could just outline some key initiatives that you have implemented to drive change towards a water-sensitive city.
So I've been in the field of, working around water-sensitive cities for about 15 years now. The biggest initiative I was trying to kick off with help of others was the Splash program. The purpose of which was to work with local government and state government and other organisations to, help them on their journey towards a water-sensitive city. Moving on from Splash, I'm now based in a local government, and I have to say it's somewhat easier to be able to be working within a local government, to be able to, kick some goals and be working towards a water-sensitive city in that space. So they've got Blacktown Development Control Plan, Part J, Integrated Water Management and Water Sensitive Urban Design. So they've got a section devoted in their DCP that what development must do to keep our waterways clean. And I guess the other thing that's worth mentioning that's quite unique to council is that we also have a compliance program for our private WSIT assets. So we actually also have 2 dedicated officers to make sure that they're functioning as intended.
I've tried lots of things. If we could trace a bit of history, I was very privileged to pick up a position in one of the first capacity building programs in Australia, actually around water sensitive urban design, from John Dallenberg and Kate Black in the Water Sensitive Urban Design in Sydney program back at the CMA. And that was my first introduction to all things water sensitive cities. That was only just coming together as a concept then. I ran the capacity building program until it collapsed under my leadership. I was involved in a few different tilts at trying to get policy direction into state government planning processes. For the last 6 years, I've been working at the water utility, Sydney Water, on trying to change the policy direction, the strategic direction of that organisation to be more about integrated water cycle management, circular economy, water sensitive city outcomes. Some really exciting things still happening and occurring in that space.
Fantastic. Christy, in thinking about some of those initiatives that you talked about, Splash in particular, what were the things that helped get those initiatives off the ground or made them as successful as they have been?
All right, I might first talk to Blacktown Council's initiatives specifically, but my understanding was that there were, back in 2006, that there were state planning policies that actually talked about water sensitive urban design that applied to lands in the Blacktown area. The pressure actually came from, surprisingly, the development industry, and it was the developers who said, council needs to provide a really clear pathway. What is this WSID? What is it that you want from us, and how do we do it? We had to get the policy in place first. And once we got the policy in place, then we said, right, now we need a capacity building program to actually build. That was the key catalyst in that regard. For a lot of people actually probably aren't aware that Splash actually initiated from Blacktown Council. So Blacktown Council is often getting called, how do you do this? How did you get that through? Can we borrow that document? And Nerida Taylor was pivotal in recognising that opportunity, worked very closely with Phil in Sydney Water to get that grant up and running to develop a statewide capacity building program. Achieving a water sensitive city is not something a local government can do in isolation. It's not something a Sydney Water can do in isolation. Like it takes vision, and I agree with Phil. We've got a really nice vision now for Western Sydney, what we're working towards. But it's going to take, collaboration of stakeholders. It's going to take dollars. Like it's again, it's not an easy challenge.
Can you give us some idea about the drivers for change in a project that you've had experiences with, and who you needed to either collaborate with or persuade to come on board with you in the delivery of a water sensitive city?
The first thing to say is that talking with partners and talking with people and connecting with people, especially across agencies, it's about the connections, and it's also about understanding the drivers that different people have and that the government has. So a really cracking example is the Parramatta River Catchment Group. They actually did some work with a PR agency to work out what would connect with their communities, and realised that it was swimming and other connections with politicians that they could then proceed with, really having momentum behind what they were doing and really getting all those different agencies and groups and councils on board. So they were very clever in connecting with the population on a common theme. These guys very much focused on outcomes, and then they worked back and said, okay, how can we deliver that? And then they had the mandate to require change because everyone had agreed in what they wanted to do.
I 100% agree with Phil. Connecting with your community and finding out what it is they want and using that as your driver going forward. And a fabulous example, the PRCG have done a wonderful job, and shout out to Sarah Hollincliffe too, who did an amazing job of getting that project up and running.
Can I ask you both about thinking about water literacy? And Christy, I'll just continue to ask you, given you're on a roll there. In terms of engaging community is really crucial for a water sensitive city, and understanding what the community want. There's also a lot of misunderstanding in the community about the role of water and the role of this type of, which system is it, the sewer system or the stormwater or rainfall? How does Blacktown go about kind of addressing those issues?
One of the pillars of a water sensitive city is actually engaged citizens. And so we're looking at that as, what do we need to do to get our community engaged? And we're working on a program logic and looking at all our different programs and how that all feeds up into getting an engaged community. Now, there'll be lots of things that feed into that. So programs that we've already got on the ground are, we've got our stormwater education officer, who absolutely, this is her role. But we've also got stormwater industrial program. So we go out and we work with businesses to make sure that what they're doing on their site doesn't impact on local waterways. We've got our compliance program. So we've got messages going out to the community that maintaining your assets are really important, because if they're not maintained, we're actually not getting the benefits from those. But there's a whole range of things that we're already doing at council. There's, gross pollutant traps that council has. Well, why do we have gross pollutant traps? So there's litter messages. So these are the things that we need to be doing to be able to work towards a water sensitive city and have water sensitive citizens.
Okay, can you outline how just gathering of knowledge and using knowledge generated from institutions like the CRC or other research agencies have helped you, Christy, in your journey to perhaps developing strategy or policy and then delivering action?
There are a range of sources that I have drawn on. So CRC, definitely community engagement research has been stuff that we've looked to. We've also been just recently, now that they've they've finished their cost benefit analysis, we're actually trying to look at how we can use that on the ground to help us prioritise some of the projects that we actually implement on the ground. And the one that we've most recently used is the Water Sensitive Cities Index tool. So the CRC has done a number of these across Australia and externally, and I've participated in a few of them now. When an organisation is working towards a water sensitive city, it's like, well, how do you define what a water sensitive city is? Like and how do you know that when you've got there? So the CRC has done a lot of research, and they've developed this tool, and it's based around 7 goals and 34 indicators. What it does is it actually allows you to go through and have some pretty robust conversations to identify where you are on these 7 goals against these 34 indicators. So it gives you a pretty good idea where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, but also the conversations that it has generated. And it comes back to that knowledge sharing. So to have planners in the room, to have asset managers in the room, to have designers in the room, to have all of those people in the room to actually hear what a water sensitive city is, and they can actually start to understand that it's not the role of the waterways team, it's not the role of Sydney Water. We've actually all got a role to play in creating this water sensitive city.
Thanks, Christy. So Phil, I'll ask you the same sort of, I can't remember my exact words, but it was just around what sort of knowledge, learning, research or other tools you've used in your work, either at Sydney Water or in other capacities, and how have you been able to apply those?
I think the big one, the big learning for me has been about the interdisciplinary sort of workshopping out of city outcome. The CRC for Water Sensitive Cities really taught me that. The first place I saw that was in some of these big workshops. I remember the Tonsley workshop we did down in South Australia, of seeing all the different people being put together in the one place.
Fantastic. Phil, I'm going to ask you now to just give us, I guess, your top 3 to 4 kind of activities or tips or things you think need to be done for achieving a water sensitive city strategy that will actually lead to some action.
Change will meet resistance, and you have to be tenacious. You have to be convinced, and you have to keep going, and there will be setbacks.
No one organisation can do it on its own. So it's essential that we're having these conversations within an organisation and external to an organisation. Like that's critical. What I think would be very helpful is that they actually are mandated in some sort of legislation. When you're particularly looking from a local government perspective, local governments don't have the budget to implement the vision, what it is we want to achieve a water sensitive city. So there needs to be some consideration as where is the money going to come from to be able to implement this vision.
Just thoughts about what your vision perhaps might not be for Sydney Water, but what your vision is for Sydney in terms of it becoming a water sensitive city.
I think is one where the residents and the workers are connected to the landscape and connected to the natural water cycle a lot more. So that's my vision, is that we connect more, and therefore we're more efficient, more cost effective, more sustainable in the way that we set up our city.
I guess a water sensitive city is one in which we as a community really value the water. We do have great places all across Sydney, and getting people to value those waterways, to become engaged with those waterways is really important.